Greetings, friends. Welcome to this lesson on the marks of discipleship. Today we're talking about giving.
Being generous.
Yep. And so my name is Pastor Wendelin.
I'm Eric.
And we are glad to be helping the communities of St. Matt's and Lord of Life to learn about how to have the mark of generosity, both internally and then visibly in what we do in the world.
So we're going to start with a little bit longer Bible passage this time. We're going to be reading from the book of 2 Corinthians. If I'm pulling this up.
So this was to the church in Corinth, so one of the early churches. And so we say Corinthians because it's the church in Corinth. We have 1st and 2nd Corinthians, are letters that Paul wrote to the church to teach them how they should be living because the church was brand new. They didn't have any examples to be working from.
A little better. And here we are. So this is chapter 8. And so this is a letter from Paul. And he's talking about, he's trying to have congregations share with one another to help when one is in need. So he writes, "We want you to know, brothers and sisters, about the grace of God that has been granted to the churches of Macedonia," so an area of churches that he also works with. "For during a severe ordeal of affliction, their abundant joy and their extreme poverty has overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For as I can testify, they voluntarily gave according to their means and even beyond their means, begging us earnestly for the privilege of sharing in this ministry to the saints. And this, not merely as we expected, they gave themselves first to the Lord, and by the will of God to us, so that we might urge Titus that as he had already made a beginning, so he should also complete this generous undertaking among you. Now, as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in utmost eagerness, and in our love for you, so we want you to excel also in this generous undertaking." Now, that's a long bit of things, but again, the context is that they're trying to, he's trying to have a collection for the widows and orphans and people that were marginalized in Jerusalem, and asking the churches in other areas. So Macedonia is a state in the Roman Empire that's in what's now Turkey, I believe. Well, actually, it's in Greece, but it's so it's a little ways away. But he's saying, asking churches in these couple different places, please give money for the church in the other place to care for those in need.
The early church was not an easy place. Just there was a lot of political powers that were pushing the people down, taking what they had, those kind of things. So you see in verse 2, it says during a severe ordeal of affliction. So they had really big problems that might have threatened their lives. But their response was abundant joy, even in their extreme poverty, and that it overflowed in a wealth of generosity. And it talks about giving according to their means. Your means are what you have. They gave according to what they have, and some even beyond what they could easily give away. So this is pretty amazing stuff.
This privilege of sharing. So the idea is that we give not because we have to, but because there's a joy in being generous, that when we can share of what we have, it makes all of us better. We feel better and we feel excited about that ability to share, and those that receive can also then have a connection with us, and there's something important that happens with it. Sometimes people say the church is always just asking for money, but really the point is the church asks for people to grow in learning how to be generous, to take joy in giving what they have rather than keeping it for themselves.
So that then the church has the tools to go and give other people joy through, whether it's Vacation Bible School or a food pantry or any of those things. Then the church takes that joy in giving and gives joy to others in making their lives better, showing God loves them.
So there's a couple of different types of sharing. There's sharing your time. There's sharing your talents.
And sharing your kindness, your kind words.
And we're going to talk about some of those in the next session. Today, though, we want to talk about sharing your treasures, your finances, and how do we go about doing that?
So financial giving is our topic here, and we're talking about being generous. And in the church, we talk about the 10-10-80 approach. So 10%, share 10% of what you have with others. Save 10% of what you're earning or what you have, save 10% of it to care for your own future, and then spend the other 80%. So if you add those up, 10%, 10%, 80%, it equals 100%. So it tells you what to do with all that you have.
And you'll sometimes hear the word tithe. A tithe means sharing 10% of what you have. So if you hear that word, that's the way that the church suggests we show generosity. So we want to do an activity to think about, how do you go about being generous? At this point, most of you don't have much income of your own.
And maybe even at church, if we pass the offering plate, you might not be putting much in, though you can certainly start putting in 10% of your allowance. That would be tithing. But we're going to do an exercise here that looks at some of the actual numbers that a real person might deal with. So we came up with kind of an average example person who would live in Burlington County, New Jersey. And this is a person who maybe they're just in a kind of a starting job, have an average of what you would earn. Go ahead.
So if you imagine for yourself, we're thinking about you, put yourself in this, and we're assuming you've finished school and you've decided you want to live in Burlington County. And so you've gotten a job, and we're going to say that you have the average income of a person who lives in Burlington County. And we're going to say that since you want to live here, then you're renting an apartment, and you've got an average apartment rental cost. So you're completely average for Burlington County.
Yeah. You don't have a mansion. You don't, live in a
It's
motel.
not the cheapest,
Yeah.
but it's a solid place. So everything is completely average. Oh, and our dog has come to join in for a moment. So this is Lance. Say hi to Lance.
Here. There he is. Okay, baby. Good boy. Is a pet on our list of what you can spend your money on? Oh my goodness.
Well, so while Lance gets resettled, we're going to look at, well, how do we go about this? So the average amount is $3,700 a month. That is the average income. So imagine that you have that much. Now, 10% of that is $370. So each month you save $370. And so then you give $370. That's how easy it is. We give that. So we share that. Particularly we share with the church, but we also can share with some other organizations that do important things. But that's all part of it. But including particularly the church. Now from there, what we're doing is figuring out, well, what does a budget look like? Well, if you have a typical apartment, that's about $1,400. Utilities, we're going to say, so that's electric, that's heating. You need to have heat living in Burlington County. It's not that nice out. And sometimes you need air conditioning. So we're going to say about $100 a month. It really depends. We're also going to say, typically on that amount of income, you have to pay about $500 a month in taxes. Now, from here, we get to start making some choices. For example, you probably need a car. Now, if you've got a car, you're going to have to pay for that. And so if you're buying a really cheap car, it's still going to cost you about $150 a month.
So that's buying like an 8-year-old small car.
Now, maybe, assuming that this is just after you finish school, maybe you have a car that you've been given, or you can find a cheaper car, or you know someone that can let you have a car. So maybe you don't have to have that expense.
Or you can take public transportation, depending where you live. That's a really key question.
But most of Burlington County, it's hard to do. So that would be $150 to have a car, if you are buying a car. If you already have a car, you don't have to have that expense. So then you could get rid of that one. But it still costs about $175 a month to use a car, because you have to pay for gas, you have to pay for insurance, You have to pay things like registration,
Mhm.
and
You
you
have
have
to
to pay.
change your oil twice a year plus.
So maintenance comes up, so it wouldn't be every month, but about that much. And we're going to say medical. Now, sometimes you don't need to spend a lot on medical, and hopefully you would have insurance that covers a lot of things. But sometimes things come up. So we're going to say about 100. Sometimes if you get a cavity, you have to pay for that. If you need glasses,
These $640, and they're not like top of the line. They're very average.
so we're going to say $100 a month as sort of a guess of what you would spend. And then we have some things that are kind of optional, exactly how much you spend, depending on how you want to live.
Clothing is optional for spending money on more clothes. Please wear clothes. But if you think, what does a pair of shoes cost? Well, depends on what kind, depends where you get them, but $75, that's a pair of shoes. That means you don't get anything else that month. So that's where we came up with that number. Would be maybe once a month you get a new shirt and trousers. Another month, the next month you wait, you get some shoes, that kind of thing.
And we said groceries, you do need to eat. So if you spent $300 a month, that's about $10 per day. So again, that's for any meals that you would make yourself, breakfast, lunch, dinner. So, box of cereal is $5. So you can have that for a couple of days. So we're assuming you spend about $10 a day. You could go with less. If you eat all ramen and mac and cheese and stuff like that, you can go with less. If you
Please have some broccoli, which is more expensive, but really good for you and delicious.
Yes, but if you want to have steak, if you want to eat organic,
shrimp,
those sorts of things, then you might end up spending more than $300 in a month.
And then we have going out. So that's going out to eat. I mean, if I just go to a coffee shop, boom, $8. So that includes going, if you go to a movie, if you go out with friends, if you, I don't know, take a train up to New York City or something for a day.
Yep. Or if you want to go to a restaurant to eat some meals.
Mm-hmm.
That can be $15 to $20 for the meal there. So,
Yeah.
So we're saying about $125 a month. Again, you could eat out every night. You can go to New York or Philadelphia every night, and go to shows or things like that, assuming that's allowed someday again. So you have to decide here how much you spend. And then there's a couple of other things here that are pretty much set. So to get a basic internet for your apartment, you would need to spend about $50, unless you don't want to have Wi-Fi. But if you want Wi-Fi, you need to spend $50 a month. And a cell phone, a basic plan is about $50 a month, 40 to 50, somewhere there. We probably go as low as 40, but for ease, we'll say 50. Now you could decide just to use your phone and not have Wi-Fi.
But then you have to buy a hotspot or pay for the hotspot per month. That's usually about 10 or 20 bucks.
If you want anything besides your phone, if you want to use a computer.
Yeah.
But some people only use their phone for internet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then let's say you want to watch TV. If you do, well, you have to have something on there to watch. If you get a basic like cable TV, it's about $60 a month. YouTube TV is about $55. So we put 55 here. It's somewhere in there. So, but 55 is about the cheapest.
It assumes that you have a TV.
Yes. iTV. But of course, that's just for getting some regular channels. If you want some on-demand services, then you have to pay for those too. So Netflix would be about $15 a month. If you want Amazon Prime, that's about $8 a month to be able to watch what's on there. And that's just for whatever is included there, not the special extra subscription fees that they have for a lot of movies.
Disney Plus, $7, Spotify, $5 plus. Other services.
We might not have picked you whatever, if you listen to Pandora instead of Spotify or whatever services you want. But this is also anything that you get someone else to do for you.
Yep. It's getting a manicure, a massage, a haircut.
Yeah, a haircut, even a very basic haircut is going to be $20 at least.
Yep. And you'd be surprised how many other services you might need from people. If you have a yard, if you pay an accountant to organize your taxes, all kinds of things.
And the list goes on.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to give some gifts at Christmas time or birthday gifts to friends. Well, you need money for that. So if you set aside $10 a month, well, that's $120 a year. That's not actually a lot in gifts.
Yeah, it's probably 3 or 4 gifts,
yeah,
really, but
at least gets you for your closest, your family or things, you can get something. And then, well, maybe you'll want to travel. At least take a vacation, even if it's just going with your family somewhere you need to get there. But if you wanted to say go to the beach for a couple of nights, well, that you might be a couple $100. So if you say put aside $25 a month, that gives you enough over the course of the year. You have $500 that you could actually get a plane ticket to fly somewhere and stay for a couple of days.
Stay with friends and family and eat their food.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So then there's furniture, devices, etc. So yeah, if you want a TV that, you haven't found one at the roadside, if you think, oh, my laptop is a pain in the butt, I need a new laptop.
If you don't have a couch and I want somewhere to sit.
Yeah, your computer chair breaks. Boom, $150. So you need to plan into your budget for having those kind of things, as well as just like spatulas in your kitchen and stuff like that.
And then maybe you want a pet. We've already seen our dog. So I'd say it's about $100 a month. You could get a cat and just do very basics. It's maybe $50 a month. If you have a bunch of cats, or you have a cat that gets sick, or dogs or things like that.
They need flea medicine. The monthly costs are really astounding.
So
yep.
100, you could probably do 50 if you want to be very basic. You could spend hundreds of dollars if you want to dress your dog in a different outfit every day.
And if your dog eats your phone, that's another issue, right? The fun costs of having a pet. So we also put here gym membership, or if you are a part of a bowling league or whatever team, those kind of things, that's a monthly fee or subscription.
So maybe $20. And then we just said $50 of discretionary. So that's just the other things that you might want to do that you haven't otherwise thought about.
If people say use your discretion, it means you're using your wisdom to make choices. So that's what discretionary money means, that you choose where it goes to, but it's an important part to have in any budget.
So with all of that, if you were to spend all of those things, you come up with $4,190 a month. Huh. Now, if we think about it, you're making $3,700. So you have about $400 a month more that you're spending than what you make.
Yep.
And that doesn't work. Now, the way a lot of people do this, then, and this doesn't even include if you had like student loans or anything, a lot of people then respond and will say, well, I can't save any money and I can't give any money. The reason that we're doing this is because saving and sharing is important. Part of being a loving person is being willing to share what you have, and not just willing, but starting with it.
And it's that important that it has to happen each month. Now, if you build up your savings, then that does help you because it earns interest, and you have that in case you have like a car emergency or something like that.
But part of the joy of being a disciple of Jesus is being a person who shares. And it doesn't just happen. That's the main reason we're looking at this, is because there's so many things that are asking for your money and your time. You have to start by saying, I'm going to be generous first, and teach yourself. It doesn't just happen. You start with a budget like this and say, I'm just going to give that $370 a month, and I'm going to save that $370, and then let's figure out the rest. And so you have to make choices from there to protect being able to give that money away. So
set that money aside.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what I'd like you to do, the assignment for when we get together to talk about this, is you'll notice that some of the things on here are in italics. Those are things where there's choices to be made. And so I'm going to be sending this out as your quiz.
You can copy it from the screen if you don't have the email attachment.
And you need to decide, how do you get down to the $3,700 a month? What do you cut out of this in order to make the budget work? You have to have an income and an expense that are equal. So again, that's about $490 that you have to make up and figure out taking out of here. So that's your assignment. And what we're going to do, at least for the St. Matt's group, when we meet in our class, we're going to share what we came up with, who made what choices in order to be generous in this way.
And if you're not sure, ask different people in your life. Ask grandparents, ask your mom and dad how they organize giving for your household. You could ask if you have a finance teacher at school. That's probably more high school. But there's all kinds of ways you can think outside of the box for how you can manage and be faithful.
So with all that, let's wrap up by continuing on with the 2 Corinthians reading, because Paul had a little more to say.
So here we go, 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 8 through 14. I do not say this as a command, I'm not bossing you, but I am testing the genuineness of your love against the earnestness of others. So how much do you really want to give? It's shown in what you do. Verse 9, for you know the generous act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for our sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. So it wasn't that Jesus had a lot of money, but he had a lot of resources. He had a lot of power. He had a lot of goodness. And so he even gave that away. He gave his very life so that we might have a different kind of wealth. Verse 10, and in this matter, I, Paul, am giving my advice. It is appropriate for you who began last year, not only to do something, but even to desire to do something. Now finish doing it so that your eagerness may be matched by completing it according to your means.
For if the eagerness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. I do not mean that there should be relief for others and pressure on you, but it's a question of a fair balance between your present abundance and their need, so that their abundance may be for your need, in order that there may be a fair balance. So again, what Paul is saying is it's not about being miserable, but rather look at what you have. Give what you can, because we make it a fair balance. When we have good gifts and others are short on them, then of course we want to share that and kind of equal it, and not see what we have as ours and I need to hold on to it and it's mine.
And the reality is that when we share, we're doing two things. One, we're helping others. But two, we're saying, hey, those others are worth helping. Like the church community is worth building. And it's worth reaching out to people who have any kind of need. And by doing that, we're saying those people or that creation is worth God's love coming through me. God has given me love, and God is so good. And so we give to help others, to help them know that God loves them, and to show God that we know how good God is, and that we love our neighbors because we know that God has put so much love into the world.
All right, so that's financial sharing, being generous. And then we'll talk next time about other ways that we are generous. Thanks.
Thanks.